Mr. Nosy by Roger Hargreaves. This is the fourth book of the Mr. Men series. Let's go right into it. Mr. Nosy liked to know about everything that was going on. He was always poking his nose into other people's business. Mr. Nosy was the sort of a person who, if they came upon a locked door, couldn't resist looking through the keyhole to see why the door had been locked. Mr. Nosy was the sort of a person who, if he found an unopened letter addressed to somebody else, would simply have to open it to find out what was inside. Mr. Nosy was the sort of a person who, if he was sitting reading his paper on a train, would much rather read the paper of the person sitting next to him. Naturally, as you might well imagine, Mr. Nosy was not very popular. People did not like the way in which Mr. Nosy would peek and pry into their affairs. They did not like it at all, but did that stop Mr. Nosy peeking and prying? It did not. Mr. Nosy lived in a funny tall tin house in a place called Tittletown. The people of Tittletown decided that Mr. Nosy was becoming much too nosy, and so they held a meeting to discuss what to do about him. "We must find some way of stopping him being so nosy," said old Mr. Chips, the town carpenter. "That's right," said Mrs. Washer, who ran the Tittletown laundry. "He needs to be taught a lesson." "If only we could think of a way to stop him poking his nose into everything," said Mr. Brush, the painter. And then a small smile spread over his face. "Listen," he said, now grinning. "I have a plan." All his friends gathered round to listen to his plan. The following morning, Mr. Nosy was out walking along Tittletown High Street when he heard somebody whistling behind one of the closed doors. "I wonder what's going on here," he thought to himself, and tiptoeing up to the door, he quietly opened it and peeped in. Let's see what's there. Splash! Went a very wet paintbrush right on the end of Mr. Nosy's nose, covering it with bright red paint. "Oh dear, I am sorry," said Mr. Brush, who was painting the inside of the door. Poor Mr. Nosy had to go straight home to try and remove the red paint, which was very difficult and rather painful. Mr. Brush chuckled to himself. The plan had begun. The following day, Mr. Nosy was walking past the laundry when he heard somebody laughing on the other side of the wall. "I wonder what's going on here," he thought to himself, and standing on tiptoe, he looked over the wall. Snap went a close peck right on the end of Mr. Nosy's nose. "Oh dear, I am sorry," said Mrs. Washer, who was hanging up clothes on a washing line on the other side of the wall. Poor Mr. Nosy removed the clothes peg and went off down the street, feeling extremely sorry for himself and for his poor red nose. Mrs. Washer chuckled to herself. The plan was working. The next day, Mr. Nosy was going past the fence when he heard hammering. "I wonder what's going on here," he thought to himself, and creeping very quietly to the end of the fence, he peeped round. Bang! Went a hammer right on the end of Mr. Nosy's nose. "Oh dear, I am sorry," said old Mr. Chips, who was nailing up a loose plank in the fence. Poor Mr. Nosy had to go home immediately and bandage his poor red sore nose. Mr. Chips grinned a broad grin. The plan was working very well indeed. The following day, Mr. Nosy was walking in the woods when he heard somebody sawing wood. "I wonder what's going on here," he thought to himself, and he crept up behind the tree. Okay, the fact that he's really curious of other people shows that he's really nosy. Yeah. This even regarding all of the stuff he got while being nosy, he still is the way he is. Okay, let's continue reading. He was just about to peer out from behind the tree when it suddenly occurred to him that if he did, something very nasty might happen to his nose. Oh, it's different this time. It's different this time. And so he went on his way without being nosy. He's becoming different, I guess. Behind the tree, with a saw raised in his hand, stood Mr. Erd, the farmer. When he saw that Mr. Nosy had gone on his way without being nosy, he laughed and laughed and laughed. The plan had worked. Mr. Erd hurried into Tittletown to tell everybody. The plan really had to work, because after that, Mr. Nosy stopped being nosy and soon become very good friends with everybody in Tiddletown. And that is the end of the story, except to say that if you are ever tempted to be as nosy as Mr. Nosy used to be, you'd better expect one thing: a sore nose. Okay, that was the book. I hope you liked it. The thing we can learn from it is that, yeah, having interest in other people, that's a good thing, okay? Having interest in other people shows that you give care, but if you do that too much, if you like overdo it, it can cause some harm to some people. Yeah, it's bothering. I guess that's the moral of this book. And I hope you liked it. Make sure you subscribe to see more videos like this. My next book will be Mr. Sneeze. Yeah, let's see you then. Peace.